היי שלום, אנחנו עכשיו בדאלאס, טקסס, כאן עם קרל דין עם American Real Estate Investments. Hi Carl, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
So can we start off, can you tell us, well, before we talk about the market, can you tell us a little bit about your company, what it does, how long it's been around?
Yeah, so our company is American Real Estate Investments. The company itself has been around since about 2000. I took over the company in 2014, and it is a turnkey company, meaning we purchase, renovate, and then tenant assets and sell forward to investors, and we maintain the management of those assets and making sure that those investors have a good time investing, basically. Don't lose their money, feel safe in their investments, and have all their questions answered.
Do you know roughly how many properties you guys have done?
Oh, we did about over 300 last year, and so we won the Turnkey Provider of the Year award, which was a big thing for us. That's basically an award that's given out by a board of real estate developers and investors, and they basically went to a vote and said, who's the best company at providing this asset, but not just the asset. Who has the best infrastructure as far as a company on the front end, on the back end, with the sales support, the admin staff, all of those things. So combining all those things, they said that we were the best of the best. So about 300 last year. I'm not sure where we're at this year, but in total, I've done 2,000 to 3,000 myself nationwide through different markets in the U.S.
So you talk about different markets, and right now we're in Dallas. Can you tell us why you're focusing on the Dallas market?
Well, originally it was because a lot of the assets we were doing were B and C class assets. And as you know, you can get into some markets where it's a bit of a headache. You know, you get some tenants that are not the best quality tenants. And so we were selling to hedge funds, publicly traded REITs and hedge funds here in the States, and they would buy heavy and then stop. And what that would do is leave us with a bunch of homes that we really didn't want to own, right? We were going off their word saying, yes, we're coming to the States, or we're coming to this market to purchase properties. And, you know, we would gear up and start performing, and then all of a sudden they would pull back without hesitation, without, you know, warning us or letting us know what's going on. And so it left us holding assets we necessarily didn't want to hold. We were providing them for the fund. And so we decided, if all of the major hedge funds and publicly traded REITs are buying in Dallas, Texas, and in Texas in general, it makes more sense for us to be down here. And the main reason is because these are assets in Texas. The asset that makes the most sense in Texas is that A-class investment. And so if we were ever to get stuck holding the bag on those assets, it's not something we mind, because we do have appreciation, they do cash flow well. We don't have a lot of issues with them. They're very, very low maintenance, passive investments. And so that was a primary reason to move down here.
So you talked about A and B and C. Can you explain why? Because a C asset normally show a lot better cash flow, at least on the Excel.
Yeah, that's something a lot of you know, especially foreign investors, they've fallen for that, you know, since the beginning of time. When the economy crashed, I had a lot of investors from Australia, UK coming over, and they were just wowed at these $50,000, $60,000 assets because the returns were so high. And 2 years into it, and they've gone through 3 or 4 tenants, and they've had turn costs, and the numbers are never what they're projected to be. And so a C-class asset is really like your lowest tier asset. That's an asset where a lot of times you'll have a Section 8 tenant in there. You'll be in areas where there's a little bit higher crime. And so as good as they may look on paper, a lot of times those are false yields. You know, those are best case scenario. And unfortunately with those assets, the best case scenario is a very rare thing. And so we kind of migrated slowly into higher tier assets, going into the $75,000 to $130,000 range in St. Louis, Kansas City, Indianapolis, those markets. And then we kind of made the jump to the A-class assets, which was really a difficult thing to do, because when you're talking about an A-class asset, you're talking about $1,200 minimum rents, you know, people with really good jobs. These are, you know, $150,000, $200,000 homes. And at first people were like, why would I want to buy a $150,000, $200,000 home when I can buy 2 or 3 homes that are, you know, performing at 15% net cash flow? And over time, you just kind of have to make sense of it, right? It was like constantly proving yourself, saying, okay, well, go ahead and buy that, and we'll see where you're at in a year. And so over time, people were coming back and saying, yeah, I understand where you're at now. I'd prefer a much safer asset. And me, myself, I prefer to have a safe asset with a good amount of appreciation as my kickback. I'd rather have those numbers come in on my equity than hoping that they come in on the return, right? Because that's where all the risk's at. That 15% net cash flow or whatever it is, all that depends on the tenant. With an asset like an A-class asset in Texas, that appreciation outweighs that for me. So instead of thinking in my head, oh, I'm going to get a 15% net yield on this property, hopefully, now I'm saying I'm going to go with a more conservative 6 to 8%, but I'm also going to get a 10 to 15% appreciation, which is what we're seeing here. And that's really that outweighs it for me. In my mind, I'd much rather have a safe asset, knowing I can pay the note, knowing I'll have a few $100s left over, and knowing that that asset is appreciating in an economy that's growing, than going and trying to force those numbers in a B or C class market.
So just to make sure I understand, in the C class assets, we're saying that they excel, the rent will show real nice, but then there's issues with tenants, there's longer vacancies, and then the turn, which is from one tenant leaving till the new tenant coming in, you have costs and repairs and time.
Yeah,
that's
time.
being lost.
It's time lost. It's definitely turn costs are heavy because people don't have as much care and concern for the property. There's a big difference between having a $1,800 security deposit and a $600 security deposit, or having Section 8 being covered in that security deposit, because then those people just have no care or concern for the property. Right? Section 8 is taking care of them, the government's taking care of them, and so they just kind of come and go as they please, and a lot of times that'll leave your property pretty banged up. And those expenses obviously hurt, and then on top of the fact that you will have to try to rent that property out again. And so sometimes it'll take 2 to 3 weeks for a repair, a turn, and then you'll be holding the property for a month or 2 months looking for another tenant, and that's not going to be the best tenant again. And so it's kind of a reoccurring thing that we just try to avoid, really.
What are you finding in this market in terms of time to get the house rented or time to get it turned? How long tenants stay in the house?
So in this market specifically, meaning Texas overall, the usual turn time is anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. That all depends on the age of the asset. So if I get a house that's within 20 years, there's no foundation damage, it's a 2-week turn. If you get homes that are in the 60s and 50s, sometimes we got to pull more stuff out of the home. We got to redo the cabinets and things like that. So that can take up to a month.
This is on the first time it's being purchased at
Correct.
rehab.
So say we purchase it from the tax sale, right? We go to the tax sale, we buy a house. We don't know what condition it's in because we haven't been able to access the home. If we were to buy a house that was built in 2000, we go in and there's some minor cosmetic things that need to be taken care of. Versus if we buy a house at the auction that's a 1960s built, we go in and we realize, we got to fix the main drain. There's some foundation issues we need to fix. There's just more that rehab entails. And so the typical turn time again is about 2 to 4 weeks, depending. And then to get them tenanted, we're definitely not seeing that take more than 30 days. I mean, for most of our properties, especially here in the DFW area, we have a waiting list of tenants. And that's always a good thing, right? We have a waiting list of tenants. We can kind of hand pick our tenants. A lot of markets like California, for instance, you're not able to pick your tenants, right? You have to take the first person that comes across that makes the cut. I love Texas because it is a very landlord-friendly state. It allows me to choose my tenant, so I can pick from 10 different tenants based on who I think would be the best fit for the home or the most stable fit. And a lot of our tenants are corporate relocation, meaning maybe their company is paying the rent for them, and we have that up front. Or they're coming down here and they have a home in another market, they own a home, and they just need somewhere to live temporarily until they get used to the market. And so those are the best kind of tenants you can get, in my opinion. They're white-collar tenants, they're great tenants. They have good security deposits, stable jobs, stable income, and then the third part of your question was, I forget what the third part was.
So from the time that one tenant leaves until you have a new tenant come in?
Yeah, so if that were and then the leases, yeah. So if that were the case, say a tenant left tomorrow, one of our Dallas-Fort Worth properties, 9 times out of 10 they're going to get their full security deposit back because they're going to have the home clean. They take a lot of good care for the home. And so that will be a turn in less than 45 days. And that's really on the long end. I'm trying to be conservative there because I don't like to overpromise and underdeliver. We've had these things where we pre-market them for lease, obviously 60 days ahead. So if that tenant moves out and the property's in good condition, just needs to be cleaned, maybe we need to swap the carpet out, you're talking about a 2-week turnaround where we can get the thing cleaned up and we already have the other tenant on standby.
And normally tenants stay how long?
Yeah, so in Texas, tenants will stay 2, 3, 4 years because they're good schools, they're used to the communities, but we only sign 1-year leases, and that's to keep up with the inflation. A lot of investors will come to us and ask, hey, how come my investments, and not from us, not purchasing from us, but they'll come to us as consultants and say, hey, how come my investments aren't performing as they used to? And it's because you signed 2 or 3 year leases and the market is appreciating so fast, you're not getting those rent increases. Value each year and those taxes might go up. You need to also adjust your rent. And so we sign 1-year leases, or if we do sign a 2 or 3 year lease, we just make sure that the verbiage is in there so the tenant knows this rent will increase by about 5% each year to keep up with market inflation.
Okay, so that's about the house and about the classes. What about the market? What's causing the population? What is the population growth and what's causing it?
Well, I'm not sure the exact statistic on the population growth, but I'll tell you the Dallas-Fort Worth area last year pulled in about 146,000 new people. And I checked the other day, and it's anywhere from 600 to 1,000 people moving here every single day. And so those are obviously large numbers. And it's not just by chance. It's not just because there's no state income tax. A lot of people say, oh, there's no state income tax. That's for sure why people keep moving there. It's jobs, right? There's this Texas Enterprise Fund, which is basically a fund put together by the governor. And what they do is they just fill it with hundreds of millions of dollars. And it started in 2004. In my own theory, Governor Perry started this fund because he kind of seen the crash happening, right? There's a lot of people who caught wind of this and they were not, it wasn't a surprise. And so I think Texas being, a state where most of the ex-presidents live, and there's a lot of money here, there's a lot of power here. Texas is on its own electrical grid. I mean, there's just so many things about Texas that make it stand out as a state. I think that they were trying to be proactive, knowing that the market was going to crash, and so they were trying to offset their dependency on oil. And so they put together this fund. And that fund, to date, has spent over $600 million in incentivizing different businesses from different states to move here and put their headquarters here. And so California has lost the most people out of all the other states to Texas. Meaning people are moving their companies, their 401ks, their Fortune 500 companies, everything, they're moving it to Texas. Because obviously there's tax implications, they make more money over here. So just this year we've had McKesson Co., which is the 5th largest Fortune 500 company, move here. They're bringing in, I forget what it is, like 12,000 new jobs. You got Jamba Juice. Just recently announced we have I think it was Charles Schwab just agreed to come here. And so what the Texas Enterprise Fund does is they'll give you a portion of what you're willing to invest in the economy. So they'll say, hey, we'll give you this building and this piece of land if you move your headquarters here, and we'll give you a $12 million grant. In return, we want you to hire within the economy 1,000 new jobs, and we want you to put in $100 million in capital investment into the state. That's a very strategic thing that they're doing. There's not a lot of other states at all really doing that, right? They're being very aggressive to go out and scout these white-collar jobs and get these people to move here. So you look at like Houston, for instance. Just recently, we had the oil scare. Everybody's, oil cyclical. People, it goes up and down just like the stock market. And over the last year, we've had, a little bit of trouble with oil, and people were starting to get a little frantic about it and getting a little, worried about their investments. And myself, I was buying heavy as I possibly could, because I see what's going on from the Texas Enterprise Fund standpoint and how they're bringing in so many other jobs. Houston, at the same time the oil was hurting, Houston hired more medical jobs than any other city in the entire country, right? Over like 28,000 new jobs just in the medical field. Right, that's not dependent on oil. That's not dependent on a lot of those triggers that can scare people about the economy or the market in particular. And so when you have a lot of financial jobs coming in, you have a lot of medical jobs coming in, you have a lot of these jobs that are really not manufacturing or not reliant on just the energy sector, that can help kind of cushion the blow. Right? And of all the states that got hurt in the downturn, in the global financial crisis, whatever you guys want to call it, Texas was hurt the least, right? The rental rates stayed pretty similar. They did take a hit, but compared to other states, not anywhere near as bad. And so it's always been a strong economy, and it's just kind of getting stronger. And it's because they're being strategic with this Texas Enterprise Fund. And you can do research on many other states, and I haven't found anybody who's being as aggressive with their fund that they have to pull in business. Texas is going after huge companies. You've got Mitsubishi moving here from New York down to Houston. That was just announced. There's just so many companies, and I can give you guys the full Texas Enterprise Fund report showing all of the companies that they've incentivized to move here. Apple moved here to Austin from California last year. You had Orchid, just so many large companies that are willing to come here and set up operations and build their companies here. It saves them money. It's very easy to transport in and out, and it's obviously very difficult in California. There's only so many roads. There's a lot of mountains, and so import-export can be expensive. Texas is not that, right? There's a lot of flat land. There's a lot of straight roads. There's more roads in Texas than anywhere else as far as miles, and you got the import-export that's heavy. Texas import-export was higher than California's for like the last 14 years, and they even beat them in tech import-export over the last, I think, 3 years. And so when you talk about capital investments in the economy as a whole, I think it was $166 billion that was injected into the United States economy as far as capital improvements, and over a third of that, and it was like 46 or 48,000, I'm trying to think of the numbers, was Texas. So over a third of the capital improvements in the United States went to Texas because companies are moving here because it just makes sense. And that's really why people are coming here, right? It's not, I'm not investing here because the houses just make perfect sense, right? I'm investing here because I understand the long-term stability of the market. I understand what we're doing behind the scenes to keep pulling people in for jobs, to keep moving people here for white-collar positions that are $75,000, $80,000 jobs, and those are great tenants.
That sounds great. Any more questions? I'm convinced.
I mean, when you think about it, I say this to a lot of people. When you think about way back when there was like Mr. Olympia, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger just dominated. He just worked harder at it. He was smarter about it. Texas is the Arnold Schwarzenegger of Mr. Olympia when it comes to the United States, real estate market. I mean, we're building large homes that are selling for prices others can't believe. Like I tell people, in California we have a lot of investors, and their average home price out there is $3-4 million. And so when I tell them, hey, I can sell you a house that's 4,000 square foot, all brick, built in 2010, has a cash flowing tenant in it, and I can sell you that house for $200,000, they just can't believe it. How does that make sense? Well, it's Texas. That's the way they do business, right? They're trying to grow the economy. They're trying to, they just recently passed the bill to have their own gold depository, right? So the people who live in Texas don't have to pay taxes on their gold that sits in Wall Street or in New York. So now they're housing all their own gold. So people who live here actually can take advantage of that benefit by not having to pay taxes on their gold. Just another thing they're doing to try to incentivize, right?
We've seen a lot of other companies that buy existing or older homes, and then you end up with systems that are, they basically stop working the next day after you buy them, or issues like that. And can you share with us the checklist you go through and how you make sure you give a product that's going to last for a while? Yeah,
so I mean, the one thing that I can say as far as our product is we built our product based around selling to the REITs. And the REITs, the publicly traded real estate investment trusts on Wall Street, they're very, very particular in how they want things, right? Specific tiles, specific faucets, all these different things. And so when we were selling to about 4 or 5 different REITs at one time, they wanted all of this, they wanted all this, they wanted everything swapped, they didn't want everything swapped. And so I got sick of negotiating on prices, and so we decided, let's just make everybody happy and hit all the triggers, and let's try to come up with the best product we possibly can. Let's do the floors, let's paint the garage, let's go over and above, so nobody can come back and try to negotiate, oh, well, we don't use this, or we don't do this, so can we get a price cut? And so to avoid that, because all it did was really slow us down, we just decided to hit all the triggers, right? Swap out all the faucets, swap out all the things that need to be swapped out without question. Obviously we have licensed inspectors for all of your HVAC, your foundation, all these things. We take care of all that stuff on the front end. We have a massive checklist that we go through with our contractors. They go to the site, they meet different general contractors and specialty trades, I guess you could say, and they go through the property and they give us a report. We'll take care of everything that needs to be fixed, and then we'll go a little bit above and beyond, right? We want our product, when compared to the neighborhood product, right, like a neighboring product, we want ours to stand out. Because most of our clients are corporate relocation, meaning they have stable income and jobs and potentially houses in other markets, I know that when someone goes in to rent a rental property in a new market, the wife ultimately makes the decision. We all know that. And so I want to make sure that it looks pretty, it looks up to date. There's nothing that's like gold or updated or something that she's going to say, I don't really like this, I like the one next door. I always want to be the one next door, right? So, painting the garage floors with something that's not going to stain the concrete is going to help, preserve the garage floor. The oil rubbed bronze fixtures that we use, a lot of that stuff is because that's what I use in my retail flips, right? If it's something I use in my retail flips, then I know that it's going to be a good rental product. Aside from that, you don't get a lot of the handprints and dirty, and it doesn't look as dirty because it's dark brown. And so there's a lot of different reasons we do things inside of our homes that just make it a good product. Like as far as the vinyl plank flooring, right? It's something that looks like wood, it has a great look to it, yet you can spill on it, you can drop on it, you can burn it. Worst case scenario, you burn a hole right through an entire tile, you peel it right up, you put a new one down. And so everything we do is to really make sure that that property is going to rent and hold up as long as possible, right? The specific carpet we use. A lot of people won't do these things because they just want the easiest, quickest in and out, right? Keep the numbers cheap and just go with it. I will spend $1,000 extra on a property just to make sure that the carpet is a frise and it's a fleck and it'll hide stain. I'll make sure that, the thermostat is, even if it's a nice, beautiful, awesome thermostat, I'll make sure that it's a very easy, functional thermostat. I'll put a cheaper one in because I know the tenant's going to call me if they can't figure out how to use it. So all of these little things we've chipped away at over time to try to make sure that when we give a person a product, it's something that they're not going to have an issue with, right? Like you sell somebody a house and 2 months later they're having an issue with this or an issue with that. I just try to nick all that on the front end. And it just comes with experience, right? Someone comes back and says, hey, I've been having issues with this. How can we prevent that going forward, right? In my own properties, right? Like how can I avoid having a $5,000 turn? Meaning, obviously when a tenant moves out, I have a huge bill. And all of these little things add up, right? The flooring that we choose, the countertops, we use a glaze on the countertops. That's kind of our signature thing, right? And it's basically like a thick epoxy coating, and it kind of makes them look like newer granite countertops. And we just do that because it's durable. It makes it look like a newer home. It gives it a better appeal, and that's something that sets us apart. I always want to, with the quality, I always have to be set apart because I'm a very competitive person, as is the rest of my staff. And so when it comes to me competing with the neighbor house for that renter, I want to make sure that I at least am suited up for battle the best way I possibly can be.
And you do inspections at the front end and the back end?
Yep, front end, back end. So our original inspection is going to be our contractor. Our main GC is going to go out, he's going to inspect the property, he'll meet the people out there that he needs to meet if there's foundation guys, whatnot. We'll do the rehab. We'll send our guys in, get everything done, and then we'll have our final GC inspection. He'll go through and make a punch list. Once the punch list is done, then we'll have our actual third-party inspector go in and do an inspection. Once he's done, okay, now we have the inspection report for the client, then we have the property management team come in and do their inspection. So there's really 3 inspections after we get done with the rehab. There's our general contractor with the punch list, there's the third-party inspector, and then there's the property management inspector. And then once all of those are done, each tenant when they move in gets a 7-day checklist also. So if you see something while you're living here, we've checked the home out, but we haven't lived in it and flushed toilets and bathed. So we have a 7-day checklist where it's anything you see going wrong or not working correctly, make sure you note it and send it to us. And so we kind of have all those little catches on the back end.
What about the systems or the age of the roof or the HVAC or AC?
Yeah, so HVAC, ACs, those type of things, we try to look at it on a 10-year term, right? If it's past 10 years, I want to have it certified and making sure it's working correctly. I might not replace it every time when it comes to HVAC and those things, but I'm going to at least have my HVAC tech go out and certify and sign off saying that it's in good use, good working use for another 5 years or so. When it comes to roofs, obviously if there's any leaks, we're going to fix those type of things. But if there's a roof that's like just old and beat up and worn down, we're going to replace it. If there's less than 5 years of anything left, we're going to replace that.
What happens if there's an issue 30, 60 days out? What happens?
We take care of it. So everything, especially with our business-to-business clients, right? If there's anything that goes wrong with the property in the first 90 days, it's without question, we take care of it. And from that point forward, going through the first year, and this is very important with our business-to-business clients, right? Because these are the people who bring in continuous business. I go above and beyond to make sure that they're happy and their clients are happy. So, we've never left anybody high and dry. We've had people come to us and say, hey, I'm 2 weeks outside of my warranty and my AC just so happened to break down. We'll repair that, right? Because our name and our reputation for being a good company means more to us than $5,000 or $10,000, whatever the case may be. It's all about the long-term here with us. I'm 31 years old. I tell everybody this. I've said this a bazillion times. I'm 31. If I want to be doing business when I'm 51, I got to take care of my clients, right? And that $5,000, $2,000, whatever it is never going to make me lose sleep. But if that person goes out and tells another person that this happened and they were disgruntled about it, that is going to eat away at me. And so I just, we try to just take care of people. We're in it for the long haul. We're not in it to make a quick buck. We're not in it to be a fly-by-night company and sell people assets and then disappear. We really want to have the biggest and most, solid investment company there really is.
Excellent. Great. Thank you.
Absolutely.